Alright, so here we go. We'll give this a try. This is video number 2 on the all-terrain mow cart build and how-to video and progress update. I'm going to try to do all this in one take. I'm going to take the camera on and off the tripod a few times and try to show you what I've been doing, what I've done, and how things are going. So, what we've got here is a Craftsman LTX, and I chose it for a couple reasons. It's got a cast iron front axle. That's a big one. Some of the LT1000s have it. I've got one that does, but most of them don't. The LTX is also a little bit bigger chassis than, like, say, the wide body Murrays, or a lot bigger than some of the MTDs, and it's got a little more room for me. I'm a big guy, I'm about 6'3", and I need a little more space to drive on the operator station. It also has a Peerless MST rear end, which is oil filled and is pretty durable from what I can tell. There's a lot of good videos out on YouTube already from Fearless Front, from Redneck Computer Geek, and from Doc Sprocket on how to take that rear end and lock the diff. So I'm not going to really talk about that. There's a ton of information out there already, and I've been pretty inspired by those guys on what they've done with their tractors and how they've done it and the utility they get out of them. The LTX also has a good Craftsman steering, which I think you can see in here. It's a horizontally oriented steel rack and pinion. Most of the newer LT1000s have this as well. The older ones have the plastic vertically oriented or 90-degree bevel gear that tends to break or come apart or have any number of failures. So that's my reasoning behind it. I did a few things right off the bat. I stripped out the wiring harness, removed all the interlocks. Big thing there is SearsPartsDirect.com. This thing right here, a schematic. If you're a high school kid, or for that matter, hell, if you're a 50-year-old guy and you don't know how to read a schematic, learn to do so. It will serve you well. It'll save you a lot of time, a lot of headaches. Take something like this and make it work right out of the gate. I clipped the wires I needed, put it back together, and it worked. Save you some time and save you some damage and repairs and probably some cost in the end. The LT1000s have the fuel tank up here under the dash, where you can see this LTX has a battery. Now I intend to put a LT1000 battery, or excuse me, fuel tank in there and have dual fuel eventually. And so that'll give me the LTX tank under the seat and a second one up here, and relocate the battery. I haven't done that yet, but is in the plans. I will probably do that in the future. I also intended to put a push button starter in. I have not done that yet. Probably will. We've still got the standard key, again running off that factory harness with the start interlocks and the seat switch removed. So that's the how-to and what I've done so far and why I chose the machine I chose. One of the other things I did, and right out of the gate, I changed out the front wheels. That's an 8-inch wheel. These lawn tractors come with a 6. It gives you better options on the tires. You can get a lot more good ATV tires than an 8-inch wheel. And then you start increasing the tire size, and then you change the attitude of the chassis. So it originally had a 15 or 16-inch front tire. I'm going to go to a 20, which is going to raise, the center line or the axle up about 2.5 inches. Now that's a problem if the back end isn't raised too, because then all of a sudden the nose of the tractor's in the air, it won't handle right, it won't drive like it should, it won't ride like the way you think it should. So one of the things I noticed, and I got very lucky on, excuse me for moving this around here, but these Craftsmans have underneath here a bracket you can see right there. 2 mounting holes on this front hanger. Those mounting holes are exactly 1 inch apart. So I've already lowered the transmission into the bottom hole, which raises the body and the chassis up 1 inch. So I've gained an inch there, and I'll gain another inch on the axle with the tires. So I'm going to go from a 20 to a 22. So that gets me nearly back to level as far as the chassis being level to where it originally was. And in the back I've added this 1-inch block, and that's some thick wall square tubing, like 11 gauge or 10 gauge maybe, 1-inch square tubing. And I'll add another one here closer to the frame so that that tab doesn't just bend. But that works perfectly with the 1-inch raised on that front hanger with those 2 mounting holes as it comes from the factory. So that will keep the overall attitude of the tractor ride, and that's what you'd expect. You know, when you're used to riding, you know, good, decent quality ATVs or cars or whatever. If you're a car guy or truck guy or off-roading into off-roading or anything, you're gonna expect this thing to handle and behave like you'd want it to. So ideally, that will work that way when this is complete. Now, I do have run into some possible belt alignment issues by raising that, because now the pulley on the rear end is an inch lower than it used to be, but I don't think it'll be a problem. The idler pulleys on these Craftsman's are right up here underneath the console tower, and so you've got almost 3 feet of difference between the rear pulley, 3 feet of distance between the rear pulley and the next pulley and the next idler. So an inch of misalignment on about 3 feet of distance on the shafts I don't think will be a problem. But we'll find out. If it does, I'll address it. And I'll do a whole nother video on belt ratios, ground speeds, and belt speeds, I guess. Sorry, it's getting late at night. I apologize. Again, one take here, you get what you get, and we'll see how this comes out. But the big thing on the wheels is that I've got 8-inch rim on the front, 8-inch rim on the rear. We'll go with a 22-inch tire on the back, a 20-inch tire on the front, and that will get me a nearly level frame and nearly level chassis when I'm all done. So one more thing on that front wheel. That's an MTD wheel, I think. You can get a lot of the Craftsman GTs. They've got a 8-inch wheel as well, but they have the bushings in them, and they're greasable, which is good. Now, I want to go with a ball bearing. So you can get from a lot of hardware stores a flanged 1 3/8 OD ball bearing with a 3/4 inch bore that will go on these shafts, but they're not a very good quality bearing. You can spend a lot of money if you want to somewhere else, but I found this one. I'm not sure if you can read it. It's a snapper bearing, I believe. The part number is 096573, and that's from Rotary. It's a sealed bearing. I don't know if you can see the black ring there, but that's a sealed bearing. I'll probably take that inner seal out and let it be greased by the grease zerk in the wheel, but considerably higher quality than what you get from the hardware store, considering that the plan for this is going to be between 20 and 30 miles an hour at top speed. And that said, I mentioned that earlier. I'll do a separate video on ground speeds. These MST's rear ends, I've got 2 or 3 of them sitting around. Every one of them is a 7-to-1 ratio in the top gear. So with a little bit of math, knowing your engine RPM, knowing your pulley size, you can figure out within a very close margin of error what your ground speed will be. So again, I'm shooting for 20-30 miles an hour, and I want the front end to be able to take that as well. The brakes will be another issue. We'll see if the stock disc brake can handle it. If not, we'll address it with something else on the axle. But 8-inch rim on the back, 8-inch rim on the front. That gets me the tire size I want. The attitude is addressed by the tipping the rear, or raising the rear end 1 inch with those blocks. I've removed these unnecessary wiring for all the start interlocks and engine kill interlocks. And that battery hold down, I said from the outset I didn't want to spend any more money than I absolutely had to. But that battery hold down is something I went ahead and it wasn't expensive, but I needed one. The original one was gone, and you can't apparently buy these things, these battery hold downs anymore from Sears or from Rotary or from anybody, but there is a universal one made. This guy right here, 319248 part number from Rotary. $7 or $8 it was, and I really don't want my battery flying around as I'm bumping off road or going anywhere. that, you know, potentially could cause it to be jarred loose. So did that. We'll be hooking up a foot throttle, probably using the bicycle brake handle that I've seen a lot of other guys do. It's a cheap way to do it. From what I can tell, it makes a lot of sense. I've got a separate video I plan to do also on how to make a dead man throttle, or the cable setup, by getting rid of the rack and pinion throttle setup that Briggs & Stratton uses. And I did that on a pulling tractor several years ago, and it's worked fantastic. So I intend to do that here on this. Do another video on that. And other than that, I've just removed all the unnecessary stuff. I'm going to pull this back off the tripod again. Down here, I still got to remove the draft links under the axle. They are just going to be in the way. This thing's never going to mow grass again. I've pulled all the framework, all the links for the deck and everything off that isn't needed, cleaned it up, and it's just going to be a runabout, an ATV, a mow cart, the all-terrain mow cart. The original mow cart's a John Deere. It's on YouTube on my channel as well. It's a 5-horse. You can see it. It's pretty cool. Turned out good. It's about a 20-mile-an-hour rig. So does a lot with a 5-horse and dual exhaust. And I guess that's all. More to come. I'm going to get this done before the camera battery goes down. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.